Hello everyone, welcome back to Familiar Force. We're doing something a little bit different today. We're going to be checking out Freeworlds. It's a mod for a game called Freelancer. Freelancer is quite a few years old now. It's definitely an older game, early 2000s. I'm joined by Dart today. He's one of the developers over at Freeworlds. Say hello, Dart.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good.
So we're going to be doing, as the title suggests, a little bit of a back to basics. Freeworld's changed a lot of the core mechanics. Things are very different in the way things run, especially in some of the basics like flying, like trading, like combat. So we're going to try and explore some of these items in this series. We're going to look at these and really want to teach Dart how to play the game, because you haven't played much, have you?
No, I've basically never launched the game for the most part. I've gone in once or twice, but I don't really play it a ton. The stuff I work on is more behind the scenes, and I mean, we've been on hiatus, so there's not a ton going on, but this seemed like a fun idea, and we don't have a tutorial video, so I'm a good guinea pig.
Yeah, and it's something we talked about before, and I very much agree with the idea. Actually, it's probably a good idea to show new players how to get started, because there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of things that could be quite confusing, quite daunting, perhaps, for a new player. So it's really kind of hoping to explore that and help people with getting started. So, I mean, Dart, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? What do you do over at Free Worlds?
Yeah, so when the mod was active, I was working mostly on the back end stuff. So we have a separate database that our FL hook stuff can talk to, and it handles a lot of our interactions and stuff. We're actually, I mean, whenever we're back together, we're hoping to readjust a lot of that stuff. But
Okay.
yeah, mostly like back end stuff. When the banking system's active, that would be something I would be working on, stuff like that.
Okay, so a lot of back end wizardry from you then.
Yeah, all the cool, pretty stuff is all friendly fire, but eventually the stuff we'll be working on will hopefully make it easier for players to send money and stuff. Yeah,
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, so yeah, that's definitely something that will help. It's definitely something I've noticed whilst I've been playing Free Worlds. It'll definitely make things a little bit easier, especially for groups. So yeah, it's cool to hear that you're working on that. Definitely.
I'm gonna bump you to the cruisers base where I'm at now as well. I think that's where
Okay,
you were, but I couldn't remember if you were at cruisers or Caria, so you're gonna get teleported real quick.
that's fine. No worries. So guys, what we'll do is we'll start by focusing on something simple, which is just basics of flight. It may sound like a strange point to start at, but it is very different to how it was in Freelancer. Um, and when we get into that, you'll start to see a little bit more of how that works. So we'll be back in a moment. We'll be out in space and we'll look at the basics of flying. Okay, guys. So let's look at the basics of flight then. So I mean, Dart, what do you remember of the original Freelancer? Did you play it much yourself, or?
I did not play that a ton either.
Oh, okay, okay,
So all I remember of Freelancer is that you shoot stuff in space.
okay, excellent. Yeah, I mean, it probably helps actually because you're not going to be expecting specific things from that. So I mean, let's start with maneuverability. We're all familiar with how to start. You know, scroll up on your mouse wheel to accelerate, scroll down to slow down, right? But there's something that affects that as well. So when you look at turning your ship, as you can see me turning my ship at the moment, it's very, very slow. I'm in just a bog standard X-wing. There's nothing particularly special about that. You know, it's your standard line fighter. But if I speed up, I start to turn a lot quicker. And the reason for that is it's a fighter. It doesn't have thrusters that can turn it on the spot. So whilst it can turn because it's in space, it's very difficult. So if we watch Dart just sort of turn around here, he's shaking a little bit. But, so as we see, as he starts moving, it certainly starts to move a lot quicker. There you go, like turning whilst he's still. It's a lot harder. Dart, you noticing that yourself as well?
Yeah. When I'm moving, with speed on it, it'll actually move, whereas now it's like molasses.
Yeah. So trying to move whilst you're at a standstill, it's very difficult, and it's a foolhardy move, especially when you're in combat. You want to keep moving, but that also works on the flip side as well. You'll turn quicker at a lower speed than you will at full thrust. So what I tend to find is I try and turn about 50% speed, and then in combat I'm flying at about 100% in a straight line. So if I need to flick around, I'm down to about 50-60%, and then I'm scrolling back up. So you start to notice that you get a little bit better control over your ship that way. And as I say, it's something that differs from Freelancer, because it didn't affect you how fast or slow you were going, or even if you were at a standstill. So something to bear in mind, something to think about is your speed whilst you're in combat. Now, as you see, we're shooting at each other a little bit at the moment, and there's a fun little mechanic in this as well. So when we're shooting at each other, the shield doesn't fully protect you. There is a punch through mechanic as well. So with the punch through, once you're starting to lose your shield, you'll start to take some hull damage still, as we can see here on Dart.
Yeah,
as I'm shooting at him, he's still taking hull damage, but his shield is up.
No,
there we go.
My engine.
Oh, are you still up? Oh, there we go.
Just barely, yeah. There we go.
So there you go. So you can see that there's a punch through on the shield. So don't think of the shield as a 100% safety blanket. It's not going to protect you from everything. You need to kind of use that to try and absorb some of the damage. But be wary that you're still going to take damage. You're still going to get shot down. So these are all things to think about in combat. Thinking about that maneuverability. Thinking about that punch through. You really need to understand your ship. Now, one of the other things that you need to consider as well is the thrust mechanic. So thrusting in Freelancer is very simple. You press down your tab key, it will thrust until it runs out, and then it will stop. And you can do that whenever you want. With the thrusters in Freeworlds, it only works if it's at 100%. Now, you can use the full thrust, as I'm using it now, and it'll give you a little bit of boost speed. But then you've got to wait for it to get back to 100% before you can thrust again. You can also, when it comes back up, there we go, you can also do a partial thrust. But again, it locks you out until you're at 100%. So again, another thing to think about your thrust. Think about how that's going to affect you when you're fighting. Do you want to zoom in? Do you want to blast past them? Or do you just want to use a little bit of thrust to just manoeuvre a little bit? Something to think about. There's one other thing that we need to talk about as well, is engine kill. It's not really a thing here. The engine kill mechanic has been taken out because, again, it's not really something that happens in Star Wars. It's not a tactic that they can use. Although I think it's used in the new films, but we won't talk about that. But yeah, so it's something else you have to consider. You can't just go sliding past, firing off shots at your opponent. You need to think about position, you need to think about manoeuvring. So that's why it's important to understand these basics of oh, there goes my shield.
Oof, chonk.
But that's why it's important to think about the basics of manoeuvring and handling your ships. Now, the other thing I want to talk about in terms of piloting is cruise speed. So you'll remember from Freelancer, in cruise you press Shift and W or click on the little button up here at the top of your page, and it'll go into cruise. There we go. I was knocked myself out of that for a moment.
Oh, you get that cool little X-wing animation too.
Yes, you do. So as I say, so in Freelancer you click that button or you press Shift and W and that's it, you're in cruise. It will charge up and you're there. With Freeworlds it's a little bit different. Rather than being just a straight cruise, you go from 0 to 100, that's it. In this you have sort of a scalable cruise ability. So if I press Shift and W, it will put me into cruise. You'll see my wings start to close on the X-wing. It's something you get in cruise mode. But you'll see at the bottom of the screen, if I hover over it down here, so you can see my speed has gone up and it's saying 115% at the moment. So I've just gone into it. If I scroll up on my scroll wheel, that will increase. It's up to 200. If I keep scrolling, I can get up to 300. And if I keep scrolling even more, I can get up to 400% thrust. So if you need to get out of a fight, you've got 400% the power to speed out of there. But again, maneuverability makes you very slow in the turns. Dart, you can probably see from back there.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a wide arc. I'm trying to chase you as well.
So I'm doing this at 400% speed, or 400% thrust. It's not good for manoeuvring. It is there to get you out of a fight or get from point A to point B. So that's the way you have to consider it. I tend to stick around about 200 normally. I don't feel the need to go over that most of the time. But then I'm not in a hurry to get around as quick as possible. So you'll find different thrusts to match your own needs. Now, you can fire whilst you're in cruise. So I can still fire my guns. But if I go, let's have a look, I believe it's over 300. I can't speed whilst the weapons are still hot. So we have to wait for them to cool down. There we go. So now they've cooled down, I can increase some speed again. And if I get over 300, it won't let me fire anymore. So you can't fire above 300% throttle. So let's think about that. So obviously we've got different maneuverabilities at different speeds. We've got thrust to think about as well. We've got the punch through effect on shields as well. There's a lot of things that are different from the base Freelancer game. So I mean, Dart, what are you noticing at the moment that's really standing out to you? Okay guys, so we've come back to the Coruscant system. As you can see, there's a lot going on around here, looking at the nav map. There's a lot of planets, a lot of places to visit, a lot of stations and such. But I wanted to take a little look at a few items that really you're going to have to focus on when you're playing. Firstly, in-system travel, and then docking on bases, both very different items to what we're used to. So before we go into that though, I just want to take a little look at the scale of things. So you'll remember from Freelancer, planets are not very big. And I know I've always had this little gripe with it where you fly up to a planet and you think, but how can you fit, 3 million people on that planet when my ship is already way too big for that? So scale is something that sort of really stands out to me. So if we turn the camera around, you can see like the ellipsis there of the planet. If we look at some of the planets behind us, there is planet Coruscant. We are 123 kilometers from that, 123 clicks, let's say. Look, I can't even fit it on my screen, and I've zoomed out all the way. But there's another planet down there. We've got Hesperidium over there. I'm sure I've mispronounced that. It wouldn't be me if I didn't. And look, you've got all these stations dotted around and stuff as well. It really feels... So the scale is so much better, and it really feels lived in. It feels active and alive, which is just fantastic. It's really nice to see the scale is proper fixed. I mean, look at that. That is the size I would expect for a planet in Freelancer. And that's 367 clicks away. That just gives you an idea of the scale of that planet, because you think if we was that close to it. Look at this. I can't even look up enough to look at this planet. Okay, so, oh, I've been flying forwards. Look at that. Didn't even mean to. Right, so, we're going to look at some in-system travel first of all. So, Dart, do you remember that in Freelancer we had the trade lanes, and that's how you'd get around in-system?
Oh, sure.
And, if it was just sort of nearby, you'd cruise.
Right, yeah.
Well, I mean, looking at Coruscant behind us, that's 124 clicks away. Even at 400% thrust, that's going to take us a little while to fly there. So, if you think about the scale of the system, cruising across it really isn't an option. You could honestly be here all afternoon trying to fly across it.
But I want to go to Coruscant. How do I do that?
Well, we won't fly to Coruscant, but let's fly somewhere a little bit further out. Let's go down to Vandor 3. Now, that's 634 clicks away. We're not flying to that through normal space. That's just going to take far too long. But if you come within, I believe it's within 10 clicks of the green hexagon in front of us, it's titled Boreas to Coruscant.
Yeah.
Okay, so you should see now that you've got a little blue dot in the distance that's appeared, and it should start sort of expanding across the screen. So,
I'm not seeing that, I don't think. Oh, yes, I am.
yeah? Yeah, you see it flashing in front of you now.
Yeah.
Okay, so it should have a percentage next to it.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Okay, so that is a fully calculated jump point. Now, there are set ones throughout the system, and if you look at your nav map, it looks like what you'd normally expect for a trade lane. These are your in-system hyperspace routes. And they are basically stable routes that will allow you to go through gravity wells, and that's something we'll explore more in a later episode when we look at this in more sort of detail. But this gives you a jump route that you can fly along. So if you're pointed towards that and you want to try and get your nose on it, and you want to go up to about 90% thrust and then hit the J key. If we watch him, guys, we'll see what happens.
I am poorly aligned to the jump vector is what's going to happen. 1 second, let me realign here.
That's right, you want to point at the blue dot.
There we go. Boom!
There we go, and he's just disappeared. So, guys, I'll show you from my end what Dart has just seen. So, we're aligned at the jump point. Actually, I think I'm a little bit off. There we go. I mean, I don't think you have to be as accurate as I am being here. I'm quite nitpicky about it myself, but there you go. That's one of my quirks. So we'll go up to 90% thrust, at the very least, and then hit the J key. And as you can see, we jump into hyperspace. So we have hyperspace for in-system travel, and this is how you travel within systems and to other systems as well. And again, we'll look at that in more detail in a later episode, but I wanted to have a little touch on this. Hyperspace is fantastic. It's a really quick way of getting around. So the only way to get between systems. You don't have, jump gates or anything like that, because that's not Star Wars. We don't have that in Star Wars. But you have the hyperspace mechanic to get around. And as you can see, we're now, if I don't fly into Dart, we're now 35 clicks from Vandor 3. We've just travelled all that space in, what, 30 seconds, a minute?
Yeah.
It's a very quick way of getting around. And you can plot manual jump points. And as I say, we'll go into that in more detail later. But now we're looking at this, I want to look at docking as well. Because that's something you're going to have to do. You're going to have to land at some point. You'll have to repair, resupply. You might be trading. So you'll have to stop and sell the goods that you've collected. So it's very important to understand how to do that. There we go. Look, he's dealt me some damage. So, we can't land on the Golan. There we go. Vandor Orbital Garrison. So if we fly over to the Orbital Garrison Dart. And so we'll go into cruise to get over a little bit quicker. But the docking mechanic is a little bit different in Freeworlds. So you could, in Freelancer, you could fly up, and if you got close to the docking point, you hit F3, you go straight in. Or, if you just hit F3 and you're far away, it will fly in and it will guide you in itself. That's not a thing anymore. That's something that's been taken away to give it a little bit more realism. So as we get closer to Vandor Orbital Garrison, again, I think it's around about 9 clicks that we'll do this. If you hit the F3 key, once you get close enough, you want to slow down to about 100% as well. There we go. So we're within 10k now, so we'll slow down to 100% thrust, and we'll hit the F3 key.
Looks like you want to get a little bit closer. Yeah.
Excellent. So you can see we've got these white boxes showing up now. This is your docking vector. This is the path that you need to follow to be able to dock with that station. And it's all done manually as well. So it's really going to test your skill as a pilot. So we can see a little dart symbol over there.
I missed one.
He missed one. So if you miss one, it's not going to accept it. You have to go through them. So let's fly in here. I mean, let's just, whilst we're flying in, let's appreciate this station. It's beautiful. Really well done. I really love the stations and the ships, and just the design is fantastic. Okay, so we're coming in on the docking vector now. It's going to automatically slow me down to 51%. And we'll fly through 1, 2, 3, and as we hit number 4, there we go. We're docked with the station. And I mean, the station is the same as you're used to normally. So you've got your ship dealer, you've got your equipment dealer, your community trader. We won't look at trade at the moment. That's something we'll come back to later on. Let's have a quick look at the equipment dealer though, just to give you an idea of what things you can swap out. So of course you have your guns, you have different types of lasers that you can choose, and they all have their own sort of specifics and situations that they're better for. It's really a case of sort of weighing up and working out what works best for you. You have different types of missiles. Again, they all serve their own purposes. Again, look through, work out what works best for the situation you're in. And as usual, guns that we can't mount, but there are other guns in there. If we look at the equipment, obviously we can buy our torpedoes and our countermeasures as normal. There's no external equipment that we can change out, so that is all set according to the ship. And if we look at the internal equipment, again, no equipment we can change out. It's all set according to the ship. It's very lore friendly. And also, you'll notice no nanobots or shield batteries. Again, something you don't have in Star Wars, so you really have to learn to fly without it. It's very interesting when you've been used to that for so long, trying to learn to fly without that. So that's docking on a base. That's quite simple. Dart, do you feel like trying docking on a planet?
Yes, that sounds like a good time. I gotta get
So,
to the Senate.
oh, of course, of course. If I can find the planet, I've lost it. I've lost it. It's big enough. There we go. I found it. So, Vandor 3. Let's dock on Vandor 3. Or land, I should say. Okay, so let's slow
Do
down
I want to
first.
select the landing beacon then?
No, so just click on the planet.
Oh, sweet.
And then, again, you want to hit F3. Now, with a planet, you can do it from much further away. And I think that's due to the size of them. It will pick it up a lot further. So we're about 20.8 clicks out. If I hit F3, it's giving me a landing vector. And it will calculate it based on your position relative to the planet. And again, we have the case of flying through these. And it will give you a timer once you start running through. So you really need to commit, otherwise you'll lose that landing vector. So we'll keep flying in towards the planet. And this one you can do at 100% of thrust. It doesn't automatically slow you down. And that's because, again, some of the landing vectors can be quite long. It really depends on where you activate it from. So, I mean, Dart, how's your landing going?
It's going. Actually, I should probably drop out of mouse mode so I'm not free flying. But yeah, I've got 29. Ooh, I think I must have missed one because it keeps going back up to 29. Or is that every
That's
time
fine.
you go through a gate?
So once you go through one of the squares in your screen, it will reset the timer. So it basically gives you a 30-second sort of limit on each square to fly through. And that's again in case you missed one. You can
because this is keep.
Yeah, so you can get quite a flight in. Like I say, if you're feeling brave, you can fly right up to the planet and then start it. Or you can start it from much further out. I'm not sure what the maximum is. I've never really tried. But to be honest, you'd be there for quite a while. You can't cruise through that. So here we go. So we're coming in. It's starting to flatten out now. Starting to level out as we come in towards the planet. And I'm not going to hit the atmosphere doing this either. So it kind of protects you from the atmosphere as you're coming in. Sometimes I've come in quite low, and you see the effect come up, like you're flying into it, but it doesn't harm you. And there we go. As we hit the last one again, it lands on the planet. We get the little landing animation. We'll skip that. And again, same as normal. You've got all your options at the top of the screen. That hasn't changed. So we've covered quite a few things there today. We've obviously looked at basics of flight, maneuverability. We've looked at the punch through on the shielding. And we've also looked at, of course, a little bit of hyperspace and landing today. I mean, Dart, what has really stood out to you on this?
I think that it's interesting the way that we have the in-space jumps, especially just because you really don't get the scale like you were saying in Freelancer. So it's nice to be able to actually feel like you're traveling vast distances.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot more to hyperspace that we'll go over. You've obviously got inter-system flight. You can plot your own manual hyperspace jumps as well. So we'll look at that later on. You've also got interdiction as well. So we'll look at interdictors and how that can affect you. So these are all things to consider. And as I say, we'll touch on those in more detail later on. Personally, the thing that really stands out to me that's a lot different is the maneuverability. And sort of the speeds and stuff. It's very different to what I'm used to from Freelancer. And it really makes you think about how you're positioning and how you're handling your ship as well. Having to slow down to make that turn, otherwise you'll just zoom past people. It's an interesting thing to think about. So there's a little bit of sort of tactical thinking that goes on as part of that.
Yeah, and it really gives like more skilled players room to shine. The more time you sink into this, like you can really get better and improve and really show off your skills. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so we've touched on a few things there. That's probably enough to get you guys started for now. I think we'll leave it there. And in the next episode, we're going to look at, didn't we say ways to make money?
Yeah, how to get paid, how to start flying some cooler ships.
Excellent. Yeah, so we'll look at that next time, guys. We've got a nice base to start from, and I've actually taken us quite close to a combat zone as well. So we'll touch on that more next time. But thank you very much for tuning in, guys. Stick with us. Make sure you subscribe to keep up to date with everything we release. You'll see a new video very soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.